Yes, good day. Today is September the 11th, 2020. It is Friday. Um, I'm sure that all of you know that this is the 19th anniversary of the attack on the Twin Towers, on the Pentagon, and the other plane that crashed, Shanks, Pennsylvania, I think it was called, something like that. That was a fourth plane that was supposed to, I think it was supposed to go hit the White House. And yes, none of you were born when that occurred. But and I'm not one of these warmonger people, so to speak, or I'm sure not one of these xenophobic people. But at the same time, that was a tragic day. I actually lost a student that day. One of my former students he was a great football player, all state in football. He ended up playing football at Columbia University, an Ivy League school. Uh, that's a great school. And then he got a very good job working in the South Tower. And yeah, very tragic for his family. His family is very nice people. But yes, so yes, it's proper to think about that today. Yeah, that event has changed our lives so much. And I mean, you guys grew up in the post 9/11 era. I mean, when I was a kid, in fact, not when I was a kid, goodness, up until 9/11, up until 2001, when you took someone to the airport, you could walk them literally to the plane, to where they entered the plane. The same. When I was a kid, me and my buddy used to drive down to Birmingham and go in the airport and sit there and watch the planes take off. I mean, from the place where people got on the plane. All right, we were bored. We were nerds. What do you want? But I mean, it's more than that. For example, it's changed security everywhere. Getting into a Bengals Reds sporting event, getting into a concert, or any place where there's a significantly large number of people, you have to go through security. It has changed our lives tremendously, uh, into the world of terrorism. But anyway, back to the matter at hand. Let us talk about primary sources and reading documents. Now, did you read the document? I'm talking to you, Mr. York. Did you read the whole document? Okay. And you're not allowed to, you can put a pause on me. Do not go any further. Pause me until you read the document. Okay? Well, I didn't know I could pause that. Oh, okay. I could pause myself. But anyway, yes, you must read the document. What does it say? And if you're having trouble with that, let's pop the document up. You paused it, didn't you? And when you are finished, we'll begin. Now, of course, I assume you've begun. Okay. So, when you read the document, what's the first thing that you do? Well, and this is really important, and unfortunately, this document doesn't have one. But when you read a document like this, normally at the bottom of the document, the first thing you read is you need to know who said this. And normally they don't only write who said it, they write in what context he was saying it. What was that person's position? Is this person who wrote or said this, wrote this, is he a government official? Is he a member of the clergy? Is he a close friend writing a letter? Is it a map? Did it come from a textbook? What is the source of the document? So when you read these, the first thing you want to do is not read the document. is not to read the document. The fact of the matter is, um, when you begin taking these DBQs for real, make sure you've read and understood the question. And then when you begin to read the documents, once again, you read each document, who said it, okay, who this person is, when did they say it? That's another factor. You know, and a lot of times, for example, when you read who said it, you get an insight into one of the most important questions. Why did they say it? What was their motivation for saying this? For example, if this person is a candidate running for public office, what's his purpose? Well, obviously, his purpose is to get elected. If he is a government official, he normally is persuading somebody to follow the rules of the government, something that they're suggesting. If he is a minister, he probably is preaching some sort of a faith. If he is a person recording in his own diary, now is that the absolute accurate accounting? You might think so, but the answer is no. It's the absolute accurate accounting from his perspective. Remember that we human beings lie, and oftentimes we lie to ourselves. Yeah. So, since we don't have a source for this document, we don't have anything written under it, let's read what is on top. The big letters. Testimony of a licensed midwife at Dillingen, Germany, burned 1587. Now, first of all, it's testimony. That means that this is a legal document. It might even be called, in today's terms, a deposition. A deposition is, and do you have to write any of that down? No, but you need to understand it. A deposition is a document, a statement taken under oath. And so the person who gave this statement or recorded this statement was under oath to be truthful. Yeah, I know, but sometimes we have to use the word truth, even though historians shouldn't concern themselves with truth. Fact. They should concern themselves with fact. So, testimony of a licensed midwife. What's a midwife? What's a midwife, Miss Weebrink? A midwife, Miss Weebrink said, is a person, they're not a doctor, is a person, a female, who helps other females to give birth to children. Yeah, in the Middle Ages, doctors didn't want no part of that. You know what I'm saying? You do also know, of course, that childbirth is, to this very day, the leading cause for death amongst women. I think I've already talked about that. But anyway, so she's a licensed midwife. That means somebody gave her a license. That means whatever kind of governmental organization they had in Dillingen, Germany in 1587, this woman was a licensed midwife. She was recognized for her ability to help people birth children. Oh yes, and one other small thing. This woman, Walpurga Hausmannen, was burned in the year 1587. And burned as some kind of punishment, because this is a legal document. Now, the great majority of the people who were burned during this time were burned either for heresy, and remember what that is, heresy, or witchcraft. It is estimated that 160,000 women, mostly women, were burned for witchcraft in Europe during from the Middle Ages. In fact, the last woman burned as a witch who was burned in France 3 years prior to the French Revolution, 1784. Yeah. Notice they don't burn men because men are good. Yes. As we'll see in this document. And so the person testifying here is Valperga Hausmannen. She's the midwife, has, upon kindly questioning and also torture. I mean, you guys do realize at one point in time, in fact, a point in time fairly recently, that when people were accused of crimes and they were questioned for those crimes, torture was one method of extracting information. I'm reminded of the story of the hunchback of Notre Dame. And please don't you dare mention that ghastly Disney thing. Probably one of their worst cartoons, that Pocahontas. But yes, the hunchback of Notre Dame. Actually, for Disney, the hunchback of Notre Dame was a poor choice for a cartoon. Victor Hugo's book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I'm sure you guys who have seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame know that Victor and Hugo were the names of the two gargoyles that were his friends. Yeah, Victor Hugo's book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, if you've ever read it, is a complete and ultimate downer. I mean, in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, at the end, everybody dies. I mean, Frollo gets thrown off the top of Notre Dame by Quasimodo. Esmeralda, the gypsy girl, she gets hung for witchcraft. And Quasimodo, who could not save her, actually, though, because he loved her. Quasimodo loved Esmeralda, but it was the purest kind of love. He loved her with a type of love. He said he knew, I'm ugly, and I just want to be close to you. I want to make your life better. He loved her. Quasimodo had agape love, the selfless love. And after Esmeralda was hung, there's like an epilogue at the end of the story, a little short blurb at the end of the story that talks about how several years after the incident of Esmeralda's hanging, somehow the coffin of Esmeralda was open, and inside the coffin, yes, was Esmeralda's skeleton, and wrapped around it like this was Quasimodo. He had crawled into the coffin and decided he wanted to spend the rest of eternity with her. I mean, yes, it's a downer, sad story. But yes, witchcraft. It is worth noting, somewhere in the side of your notes, if you are talking about that 160,000 women were burned in Europe for the crime of witchcraft. And here, this is what you should know, that all the women had the following things in common. All, no. Most, yes. And I mean, by a ginormous percentage. They were older women. They were alone, meaning that they had been widowed or they had never been married, meaning they had no support system, saying that, no one would take up for them, take their cause, protect them. And oftentimes they had odd appearances. I shouldn't say odd. They were deemed as not being physically attractive. How's that? Notice I said deemed as not being physically attractive. So, back to the matter at hand. Let's see. So, upon kindly questioning and also torture, confessed her witchcraft and admitted to the following. So in other words, this is her statement after they put her foot in what they called the boot. And the boot was basically a metal shoe that they put the foot in there. You do know, by the way, that the foot has more nerve endings than any other place on the body, with the exception of the lips um, and the human sex organs. And so, yeah, they put the foot in the boot, and the boot was a device which they could turn a screw-like device or something like that, a crank, and as it did, the boot became smaller slowly. And it doesn't take long, trust me. And so, she had under that kind of torture that she admitted to follow. It's not the only kind of torture, but it's an example. When she became a widow, she had cut corn for this guy, the other person, Hans Schlumberger. Don't you love these German names? Now, another thing to notice: cut corn. Now, Mr. York, being the avid farmer that he is over there saying, Mr. Horton, this is not right. Corn in Europe? No, no, no. Corn is not a native European crop. And Mr. York is correct. Corn is not a native European crop that they had at this time. Corn, as Mr. York has wisely let us in on, corn came from the Americas. But, and this is something that might come in handy one day to know, in Europe, anytime you mention any kind of grain, wheat, barley, oats, Timothy alfalfa, as a group they call it corn. Strange, huh? Yeah. She had cut corn, in other words, she cut grain for Hans Schlumberger. Him she enticed with lewd speeches and gestures, and they convened that they should meet in her dwelling, there to indulge in lustful intercourse. So let me see. So she cuts corn for this guy, Hans Schlumberger, and so she's the employee, he's the employer, and according to this, she enticed him with lewd speeches and gestures. How many of you women believe that? You all believe that, right? You all believe that. Don't you believe that? That this Hans Schlumberger, he must have been a hunk, right? That's why she did it, right? Hans Schlumberger. Who doesn't want Hans Schlumberger? Lewd speeches and gestures, and they convened that they should meet at her house to indulge in lustful intercourse. But it was not the said bondsman, that means Hans Schlumberger. It was not Hans Schlumberger who appeared to her to have sex, but the evil one, the devil, looking like, it says there, the devil in the latter's guise, looking like Hans Schlumberger. So Hans Schlumberger, but who's really the devil, made her many promises to help her in her poverty and need. Wherefore she surrendered herself to him, body and soul. Okay. For food, now, here, the accounting kind of breaks off and goes in another direction. So, and it does. The first part that I just read to you talks about, so basically we can pretty much assume that there's this woman, she cuts corn for this dude, Hans Schlumberger, and somehow they agree to go to her house and have sex. And, that's what we know right now. Okay, so let's look at the second half. Now, look what it says. For food, she, Walpurga Hausmann, often had a good roast, or an innocent child, which was also roasted, or a suckling pig. Oh, yeah, she had a pig or a child. Does the month have an R in it? That kind of thing. The evil one also compelled her to do away with and to kill young infants at birth. Remember, what's her job? What's her job? She's a midwife. So the evil one also compelled her to do away with young infants at birth. This she did as follows. A child of the governor, she had so infected with her salve, and salve is like an ointment that I'm sure she made herself, concocted out of various and sundry things, that he died within 3 days. 3 years ago, she had sucked out the blood of Citizen Kung's child, a twin, so that it died. She had also rubbed a salve on the beautiful son of the chancellor. This child had lovely fair hair, and she had given him a hobby horse so that he might ride on it. Hobby horse, you know what that is? Hobby horse, yes. So that he might ride on it till he lost his senses. He did likewise. Now, our job here is to try and get to the bottom of this. Come on. Now, how many of you guys out there, um, besides Mr. Fuller, believe that this man, Hans Schlumpberger, uh, comes to see this woman in the guise, well, he comes as the devil in the guise of Hans Schlumpberger. Like I said, besides Mr. Fuller. So let's see this. Why was this woman being burned at the stake? Obviously, she's being burned at the stake for the crime of being a witch. But why? What had she done? What really happened? First, let's look at the charges. She often had a good roast or an innocent child. The evil one also compelled her to do away and kill with young infants at birth. Now, here's your question, Miss Mounts. Do you think that midwives ever had occasion where the children they were delivering died? That's not possible. And how do you think those parents felt? You got to remember, this is still the age of faith. This is a period when science doesn't play into the game. They don't understand anything about anything except that there's good and evil, and we don't really need that, do we? There's good and evil, and there's witches all around, and whatever. So, a child of governor, she had infected with her salve, that he died within 3 days. Once again, you have to remember that during the Middle Ages, in fact, right up until recent times, one of the reasons for having lots of children was the simple fact that if you had 8 children, there was a good chance that 3 to 5 of them would die before ever reaching adulthood. And so you had lots of children. And so it is not out of the realm of belief then that, yeah, little kids died. A twin, so that died. She'd also rubbed a salve on a beautiful son of the chancellor. And then it goes on, this child had lovely fair hair, had given him a hobby horse so that he might ride on it until he lost his senses. He died likewise. But that doesn't explain why. Why the elaborate story about Hans Schlumpberger and becoming the devil? And the other thing is, how did this story get out? That's the key. How? because they went to her house. How did this story get out? Now, once again, this Hans Schlumberger, he's somebody. He's a landowner. And I'll guarantee you he's married. Yeah. What do you think happened? What do you think happened, Emma? Miss Jasper? Why did the story get out? Wait a minute. You don't suppose that perhaps a third party, someone else, saw the good Mr. Schlumpberger slumping into her house, or worse yet, somebody entered that house, or who knows, maybe even Walpurga Hausmannen had the gall to actually spill the beans. And come on, it's Hans Schlumberger. Hans Schlumberger is a bondsman. Hans Schlumberger owns land. And here he is involved with this other woman, having sex with this other woman. So what's a Schlumberger to do? Answer: come up with a good story. Now, me and you, somebody tells us, oh, the devil took over my body, or the devil appeared as me and went and did that. You and I would say, yeah, okay, right. But in 1587, that's a good story. Especially for a woman who lives alone, especially in a period of time like the Middle Ages, when everybody's scared of witches, especially for a woman who makes a living birthing children. Many of those children do not make it. Yeah. And so they believe Hans Schlumberger and Walpurga Hausmann gets tortured and ends up being burned at the stake for the crime of being a woman. Basically. No, for the crime of being a poor woman. Basically. Yeah. Now, see, now will all documents be that juicy? No, but you've got to be able to read into the motivations of why people say what they do. Because eventually, when we start talking about doing DBQs, document-based questions, that's a critical part. That gets you an extra point that you can see why somebody said something, their motivation. Because people like to say that they're truthful, but once again, truth is something that comes up in philosophy classes, not so much in history classes. In history classes, we are concerned with fact. If you're here, I would say, any comments or questions? Unfortunately, you're not here. So let's see. I hope that was an interesting exercise. How are we doing per time?